This is the Dual 1219. I picked this up off eBay a couple of weeks ago, and I've been working with it since then. I thought I'd share my experiences with the folks here in the vinyl community so that they can see some of the ups and downs of going that route rather than buying a brand new turntable. I think the biggest advantage in buying vintage is that you get a real high quality turntable for a much less expensive price tag. I am not an audiophile, let me make that clear, in that I do not have very high-end equipment. I don't have low-end equipment either. I'd say I'm a mid-fi, for lack of a better term. But these duals were made in the early 70s in Germany, and many of them were imported here into the United States, and they're real workhorses. And that's I have one already on my another system I have set up here in the home, and I bought it from a seller in Ohio. This was described as working correctly and no issues and very clean. And he's correct. If you'll look, oftentimes the dust cover will be damaged or not in place at all. The first dual I bought, I got for a little better price from a turntable repair guy, because the plinth was homemade and the dust cover was just an old dust cover off some other turntable that didn't actually fit very well. But just as you can see here, very clean, no cracks, no breaks at all, and that's a big plus. Now, the one of the questions I asked in sending him the emails was about the switches, knobs, if they moved freely or if there was some resistance there. He responded that they did. Everything worked properly, and it was they moved freely without any significant resistance or anything like that. And then I asked him about the cartridge, and he informed me that the cartridge was a Shure V15 Type 2. Did a little investigating, and that is a good cartridge. Probably the cartridge that came on this around 1970. So this cartridge is probably over 50 years old. Now, some people will say, change the cartridge. That's too old. But other people will tell you that if the cart works, it is as good as the day you got it if it works properly. And if you don't have channels going out or connection problems or things like that, then there's no real reason to get rid of a cartridge if you like that particular cartridge. So one of the hopes in communicating with him was that this cartridge, in fact, was in good condition, and the stylus as well. Another risk when you buy something on eBay, unless it's a pickup on site deal, is that it could get damaged in shipping. And so that gets into when you're buying something like this on eBay, the cost of shipping. And if they offer a real low rate, if they say they'll ship it for $20, then either they're going to throw that thing in a box and send it to you with no effort and no decent packing, or they're overpricing the product and making up for it in shipping. Now, I don't know how much it costs to ship this, but I know it's not cheap, whether you use UPS or FedEx. This seller was asking $68 shipping. I've seen higher than that, and I've seen lower than that. I've seen significantly lower than that. But after we actually agreed on a price, and we closed on it, we talked on the phone specifically about how it would be shipped. And of course, the thing you want to be most careful about is the tone arm and the cartridge. If they become damaged in shipping, then you could have what would have been a very good system in a rough shape. Also, the dust cover, if it gets moved around in shipping, not packed correctly, it could break, become damaged, and those dust covers are very expensive. So also the platter, of course, is extremely heavy. I've got a record on there. I've been spinning before I started this. That platter is very heavy. He took the platter off and shipped that all in the same box, but with lots of padding, and the platter separate from the rest of the unit, and the dust cover separate too. So it had basically 3 different parts of the box for those 3 different parts. So it arrives, and as you can see, it is pristine. Now, one thing about the duals, a lot of them, they had an agreement with United Audio, and they would ship them from Germany without the plinth. The base is the plinth. I don't know why in the United States we don't just call it a base, because that's what it is. It's the base. But this is not a United Audio base. When they had the agreement with United Audio, they just shipped this part, and they put it in the plinth once it got here to the United States before they put it out in the retail stores. But some of them are actually dual plinths before that agreement, I suppose. And that's what this is. And it comes with a little, let's see, move that a little bit. There we go. A little storage place here. The spindle for the multiplay is over there on the far left. The adapter for 45s is right here. And I'm assuming some of these places, and it gives you a little diagram to tell you what they're for. I'm assuming maybe the sled that the cart came in, maybe there's a place for the sled or the cartridge here, things like that. But neat little feature. Now, I think I said a moment ago that this was a idler drive as opposed to direct or belt driven. Rotation's just right for 33 1/3 or 45 or 78. It comes with this. Now this is the 1219. The 1229, about the only thing different between this and the 1229 is it had a strobe over here somewhere, and it would shine with a mirror, reflect back, and you could adjust the pitch slightly on there. But this one, you are to use a fluorescent light, shine a fluorescent light on it, and when it looks like the pattern for the particular speed you're trying to set is correct, it'll look like it's standing still instead of moving. It'll give you that optical illusion. I hadn't tried it yet because I don't have fluorescent light. Sign of the times, I guess, 50-some-year-old turntable. I'm going to try one of those black light, like a flashlight black light, and see if I can get the same effect using that. But there are other ways to check that. And I did check this. That's one of the first things I did was check that and set the speed. And I had to adjust the pitch controls right over here. And I had to adjust it, right here it is, just a little bit to get it exactly at 33 1/3. But what we've got right over here is the motor. And it's about the size of a baseball, I guess, maybe a little smaller than a baseball. And it sits right here. And then there's a rubber wheel that the motor turns the rubber wheel that sits right here under the platter. Sits right here. And that rubber wheel in turn turns the platter. So you don't have So the advantage over a direct drive. Direct drive means the spindle, the center of the platter under the spindle is where your motor is, and it's directly turning the platter. So you get some roar sometimes. And the a little bit noisy. And the disadvantage of belt driven is that, of course, your speed fluctuation is more of an issue with a belt because a belt can get stretched down a little bit or not turn as consistently. So the idler drive with that rubber, almost a gear, you might say, turning is that's the advantage of it. The motor is not centered over the platter, and it's not a belt. And so the consistency of the speeds on a well-maintained idler drive turntable are supposed to be extremely good. So I was pleasantly surprised. The Plinth there are no scratches on it I can find anywhere. I did find out that this came from an estate of a doctor, so it appears that it was well maintained at the time. But I started, there were a certain number of issues that I had to address, and I'll talk about them now. Now, of course, once you get the turntable, you set it up, and you want to go through the motions to check everything out, make sure everything's working right. There are a few things you need to kind of do first before you ever start up the turntable. One thing is you want to balance the turntable. Make sure it's sitting level where it is, or else it's going to screw up a whole lot of things about it. And you don't, for $3 or less, you can get a little line bubble leveler there. See, little Stanley. Pick it up at the hardware store or the Walmart or wherever, and just put it around in the different locations on the turntable. Make sure the front is level. Make sure the back. Put it right there on the platter at the spindle. Make sure it's level there, over here. Just go to several different locations and make sure it's level. That's important. Another thing, you want to get you got to assume that the counterweight is off. Just assume all that stuff's off and start from scratch. You got to reset your counterweight and get that on 0 there. So the tone arm is just sitting and not going up or moving downward. Get it so it just sits like that with the counterweight. And then you want the counterweight set to 0 once you've established that. Okay. Then you want to make sure your cartridge, what your setting, your gram setting for your cartridge needs to be, and that's in the specs of your cartridge. And if you've got an old cartridge, in this case this old Shure, it took a little while, but the internet's your friend. Look it up, and I found that it recommended between 0.75 and 1.5 grams. So I set it on 1. Okay. And so, then you do your fine tune dial and you set that on 1. And whatever you set that on, you want to set the anti-skate. Now, on those duals, they have 2 settings for anti-skate depending on what type of stylus you have. The conical or the elliptical, as I say, and you set a different dial depending on which one you have. So you set your anti-skate to whatever weight you set the tone arm to, the cart to. So in this case, 1 gram. Okay. Then you want to make sure that what you're getting there by setting the counterweight and setting the dial is correct. So you also need one of these, and this is just a electronic weight. You See how that is right there? You set it down and you set the needle on that dot, that white dot. Let it down real easy. Turn this scale on. It's an electronic scale, and it'll tell you truly, what the pressure is of that needle, that stylus setting there is. And when I did, it turned out it was a little bit more than 1. So, the counterweights aren't as precise as maybe you might assume they are. So I dialed it back to just a little less than 1 and checked it again. And it checked at 1.04. And I said, okay, that's close enough. I'm going to leave it right there. So it's slightly more than 1 gram, because I knew my scale was between 0.75 and 1.5. Okay, so once you've got that set up, you also want to make sure, well, you probably should do this first. Make sure your turntable, your cartridge is aligned correctly, and you'll need one of these. Okay, protractor, I guess, is what is a cartridge protractor, and you just set this in center spindle, and you've got an outer and an inner, and what you want is you want to get the stylus tip to sit down on that X. And once you do that, what you should have is it squared all the way around. The sides going straight across on each side, and the front going straight across here, not angled a little bit, because that means your needle is going to be angled a little bit as it goes through the grooves. And then once you've done the outside, you move over to the inside, because remember, your needle's moving across like that, and it may align here but not align here. So you've got to make some adjustments, and you just have to mess with it a little bit if you do. One disadvantage to this one, it's hard to get down there and see exactly where the needle sets. I did the best I could, and everything lined up well, so I said, okay, I think I've got it. But I did send off for one of these for a few. I should have spent the extra money. This was maybe $6 or $7. I should have spent the $11 or $12 and gotten the mirrored one, because you can see it a little bit better, hopefully, with the mirrored one of that. Okay, so you want to set that up. Then I started experiencing an issue. It was playing well. The pitch was adjusted just right. Everything, it sounded really good. The cart and the stylus, not having any issues with those. It sounded like I was getting a full, complete sound. It was not, wasn't lacking anything. So I feel like my cart and my stylus were doing well. But suddenly, after about 2 days, I noticed everything seemed to be coming out of my left speaker, and my right speaker, you could barely hear anything. Oh no, what's that? I went back and forth. Is my receiver's channel gone out in my receiver? Is it a bad connection? Has something gone wrong with the turntable? The only thing different was the turntable, the most recent change, so it makes you think, oh, it's something with the turntable. So I troubleshoot, thanks to the folks on Davis Winchester's live stream and the Steve Hoffman forum. Between those two resources, I got a lot of feedback and information, and eventually figured it out. But first, once I established that it wasn't the speaker had blown out, then is it the connection from the turntable, the RCA plug from the turntable to the receiver? Well, I cleaned with alcohol the RCA plugs and around it, and I even sprayed a little Dawg into the port where you plug the RCA plug into the receiver. And I played another record. Hey, it sounds, I think it's right. But then I realized, okay, it is coming out of the other speaker better, but it's still not an equal volume between the two speakers. So something's still wrong. uh, went out and one of the suggestions someone made is the sled on the car, on the for the cartridge on the dual. You just slide the sled into the cartridge shell head. Slide it into the sled, and it makes connection. It doesn't. They're not prongs that plug in. They're like little fingers that make the connection like this. Come into contact with each other. So I think I used a Q-tip, and I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember. I think I used a Q-tip with the iso alcohol, and I wiped them to get them clean. And then I just sprayed a little deox on a paper plate and used a Q-tip and dipped it in that just a little bit, and I wiped those connection points between the cartridge and the sled, and then I in the tone arm, and I plugged it back in after that had dried, and that was it. That's all it was. It was a poor connection there. I was scared to death I was going to have to carry the turntable to get it worked on, but I appear to have gotten everything up and running. Oh, and then what I started hearing the noise. It sounded like a faint rattlesnake warning, and I said, "Uh-oh, my motor! It's going to be motor." It, it appeared to be coming from the motor, and that means a lot of work. Look at the lubrication points. You can't lubricate that motor externally. You can't put drops in the piece that comes up from the motor and it get in there. That's not going to work. But you take the platter off, of course, where the platter goes in the center, where the spindle goes in. You look down there, and I cleaned it first. That was the important key, is to always clean and try to get any grease or gunk off before you put any lubricant on, or else it's just going to continue to gunk up gradually. And I cleaned it off good with a Q-tip, and then I used 3-in-1. Now, someone suggested use the 3-in-1 electric motor oil. Could not find anything like that. There were a couple of different 3-in-1s, but I think maybe this multi-purpose is just what it goes by now instead of electric motor oil. And it's very important, from what I can tell, is you don't put too much. You don't put too much, and don't put it anywhere where they say not to put it, because some things need friction, and this would defeat the friction. So I just put a drop, ended up putting 2, I think, down at the very bottom where the spindle comes up. A couple of drops, and then take a Q-tip and try to wipe out any excess. You don't want too much in there. Put the platter back on, and there it goes. It worked. Well, it worked fine. So those are some things to look out for. Now the risk you take in buying something old and used like this on eBay, of course, is that it's not going to be what they say it is. They presented it as is, but they say that this works and this works, and you get it there, and well, maybe it functions, but it doesn't work properly. And you end up having to spend money on it, or spend a lot of hours time repairing it. And the other risk, you're paying for shipping of something like a turntable or electronic equipment of some sort. You risk it being damaged in transit. So those couple of things. So it could have, and another risk is that car truly still functioning correctly, or is it something that's going to need to be replaced? It was a good deal for me in this case, but it was a risk. If I had to carry this to the shop to get it repaired, I figured probably $150 or more to get them, to get the person I know that works on them to work on them. And if I needed a new cart, if I wanted to go to the top line, or one of the top lines, the Audio Technica, is it 540? That's $250. I could have gone a little lower grade cart and stylus, but in this case, I don't have to replace any of those parts. I think I've done everything that needs to be done at this point for maintenance and servicing. And barring something going wrong with it in the near future, I think I got away, and it cost me what I paid for it directly from the seller, and not a lot of extra cost. So this, I'm not going to talk about what I paid for it, but these things are selling in this $550 to $800 range if you're buying it from somebody that specializes in revitalizing these dual turntables, things like that. Buying them from someone that works on them, that has serviced it and overhauled it. Maybe you could get one for $400 or $500, but I ended up, not having that much invested in it. So I'm very happy with that. It's gonna give me a lot of enjoyment over the years. Okay, so there's a look at the new dual turntable I just got. And I'll remind everybody, be kind to your neighbors, because folks, we're all neighbors.